Welcome to your Health Reset, where we address the real root causes behind health issues today to get you rapid results on your health journey so you can be who you came here to be, mind, body, and spirit. I'm your host, Sinclair Keneally, survivor of complex chronic illness, expert on resolving root causes, and co-founder of Detox Rejuvenation and Meditation RX. Let's get started. Welcome back to another interview with me, your host, Sinclair Keneally, and I am joined today by my amazing friend, Sachin Patel. Hi, Sachin.
Hey, Sinclair. Nice to see you again.
I gotcha. So we're going to dive deep today into some of the lifestyle, mental, emotional, and spiritual factors that you see as affecting folks and starting to show up first in the gut in terms of dis-ease and dysbiosis, and then those extending into further chronic illness. I would love to get your take on this because I know how much study you've devoted to this and what great results you get in your community.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I think this is such a relevant topic, and I certainly appreciate all the work that you're putting out there, and I trust that your audience does as well. There's a famous saying that goes something like this: all disease starts and ends in the gut. And I think many of us, whether we realize this now or at some point in the future, will come to this same conclusion that it really starts in the gut. And so our gut is really interesting. It's really fascinating to me because embryologically, our gut, our brain, and our skin develop from the same part of the embryo. So they're all interconnected at one point, and then they branch out into different aspects. Whenever we have dysfunction in the gut, it can sometimes show up in the skin or it can sometimes show up in the neurological system because these tissues are so very closely related to one another. Our gut is really fascinating to me. It's also referred to as the solar plexus. And it's really cool because our gut turns sunshine, the energy that the sun produces, and then plants convert, which then animals may consume, or we may consume the plant itself. And then it converts that sunlight energy back into energy that we can use in the form of ATP, in the form of amino acids, in the form of essential fats. And it helps us reconstruct our tissue. Really fascinating piece of machinery that we have. And many of us don't realize the intricate role that it plays in our overall health. Many of you probably know that the majority of your immune system is in your digestive tract, which obviously makes sense. The surface area of the digestive tract is about the equivalent of a tennis court. So, through the fractal intelligence of the universe, we've got this massive surface area confined to a very small area or a very small space because of the way our gut lining is actually structured. So, it plays a much bigger role than we might think than what it appears to be the case because it's all wrapped up inside of us. What I love about the gut is that it's a great starting point for people to get healthy. When we improve gut health, we improve the health of every system in our body. So you can't build a healthy brain until you build a healthy gut first. You can't build healthy joints, healthy skin, healthy immune function until your gut is healthy first. So it's a lead domino that either leads to disease or dysfunction, or the lead domino that leads to long lasting eternal health. And one of the things that's cool about the digestive system is that it's in a constant state of replacing itself. Of course, we all know that the digestive system starts in our mouth. So our lining of our mouth is constantly sloughing off and replacing itself. Our taste buds replace themselves every 7 to 10 days. The lining of our digestive tract replaces itself every 3 to 4 days. So we've got this constant state of replacement that's taking place, which means there's a very eminent opportunity for us to heal and repair and regenerate the tissue that's in our gut. Now, one of the things that happens that leads to dysfunction in the GI tract is a lack of blood flow and a lack of waste removal. Now, waste removal comes in two forms. Clearly, one of those forms is elimination through the bowel, and another form is through the lymphatic system. And so, what we've uncovered is that when people are in a constant state of fight or flight, it changes the way they breathe and it changes blood flow. And when we alter blood flow, particularly to the digestive system, under times of stress, there's about an 80% decrease of blood flow to the gut. And because of that, the digestive system can't do its job properly. We also know that when we don't breathe correctly, we can't allow for proper lymphatic drainage to take place because our diaphragm serves as a piston and a pump that moves lymph out of these organs. So our digestive organs aren't just our large intestine, small intestine, and our stomach, as we might think. It's also our liver, It's also our kidneys because they're moving these waste products out of our body. So they're part of that process. And of course, our pancreas and our gallbladder is also involved in that. So we involve many core trunk organs in the process of digesting our food. And so breathing correctly is one of the keys to improving our overall health. And breath is the master override to shift us from a sympathetic dominant state into a parasympathetic state. And when we go into this parasympathetic state, then we start taking blood that would have been going to the limbs. And now that blood starts pouring into the core and into the trunk so that those organs can start functioning properly. So, when we say that the gut is the lead domino towards healing, but if we step back just one more step from that, I would say that the tone of our nervous system is really the lead domino because you could be eating super healthy, but if you're not sending blood flow to that organ system, you're in trouble. So, one of the things I say is that where we send flow is where we send function. If I want to increase function of my liver, of my pancreas, of my stomach, of my digestive organs, and small intestine, large intestine, I have to increase blood flow to those organs. And we also have to remove waste from those organs as a byproduct of their metabolic function. So, breathing is one of those things that helps us shift into a parasympathetic state, helps us send blood flow to those organs. And because of the physical pumping action of the diaphragm, it also helps us remove waste. So, those are some things that are very critical. And when we work with clients, there's really 5 C's that we go over when it comes to digestion. And I think this will be very helpful as a framework for people because they can apply this immediately. You don't have to wait until you go see your doctor. You don't have to go out and buy any supplements. You don't have to do any of those things to use these 5 C's to start seeing your health move in the right direction. And if you're not doing these things, then there's no pill that can do these things for you. There's no surgery that can do these things for you. There's no supplement. So whether you're taking drugs or whether you're taking natural supplements, they can't do this job for you. This is something we have to do for ourselves. So the first C is we have to choose. We have to choose foods that align with who we want to become because our food represents our future. This
Mm.
is who I will become. These cells of this animal or these cells of the plant that I'm going to be consuming will turn into my own cells, assuming that I digest this food properly. We also have to choose how we feel about that food. Sinclair, if you and I were eating the exact same meal, let's just assume that for the sake of this example, if you and I were eating the exact same meal, but I was viewing it as a form of punishment, like some children do when they have to eat their vegetables, and you were viewing it as something that you're extremely grateful for and you're proud of, and it's something that you prepared, or maybe even something you grew, your energetic vibration towards that food is going to be radically different. Have you ever noticed that sometimes, no matter how bad other people think our food tastes, if we made it, it somehow tastes better to us, right? Because there's an energy signature that goes into our food in the preparation process and the growing process and so on and so forth. We have to choose how we feel about that food. And we want to view it through the lens of gratitude. If we view it as a form of punishment, it's going to digest differently. And I don't know if there's been any research that shows this, but to me, that's very intuitive. The other thing that we want to choose is what that food represents. Does that food represent nourishment? Does it represent entertainment? Or does it represent addiction? This is a framework I got from one of our mutual friends, Michael Burnoff. If you're eating a salad, clearly that's nourishment. If you're eating a little bit of popcorn when you go to the movies or pop some at home, organic popcorn at home, then maybe that's a form of entertainment. But if you eat the whole container, then that's probably addiction. So by correctly classifying how we're consuming that food and the lens through which we look at it is going to give us a more realistic perspective of what we're doing to ourselves and what we're doing to our health. And it allows us to better categorize and make better decisions. So the first thing is we have to choose the right foods and choose how we feel about those foods. The next thing we have to do is we have to chew our food. So this is something that is very often overlooked. And the reason this is important is because your stomach doesn't have teeth. So think of digestion like a car wash. When you go through the car wash, like you would never take your car. Let's say you got a brand new Porsche and you're going through this touchless car wash. You wouldn't, and the car wash had a sign outside that said, "Hey, listen, guys, the soap dispenser is broken, but we're going to push your car through anyways." You probably wouldn't go there. And so each step in the car wash relies on the previous step being done. If I don't lubricate the surface of the car and I rub the brushes all over it, it's going to damage and scratch the paint. So our digestion is the same way. Our stomach relies on our mouth doing the physical work of chewing the food, increasing the surface area, breaking open the cell walls of the plant matter we're consuming so that we can then extract the nutrition.
Mm.
If we don't chew our food, which many people don't, believe it or not, They just wolf it down because in our Western society, all meals are viewed as an inconvenience, right? That's why we call fast food convenience food, because anything else is inconvenient to us, right? We don't say it that way, but at an unconscious level, we are actually categorizing the food that we eat slowly and that nourishes our body as a form of inconvenience, right? Kids don't really have a lot of time to eat when they're at school. Adults, they barely schedule a lunch for themselves. And if they do, they're usually working or they're distracted while they're consuming it. And so they're probably not chewing their food and being intentional with every bite that they take. When it comes to plants, 80%, or depending on what your philosophy is, but I would say at least 50% of our diet should be plant based. So that means we're eating greens, we're eating healthy, nutritious plant based foods. And those foods are really interesting because I don't know, you know this, Sinclair, but the cell wall of all plants is wrapped in cellulose. It's made out of something called cellulose. And it's almost like a plastic bottle, right? So if I've got this plastic bottle, my nutrition is in the inside of this bottle, right? If I were to swallow this bottle, then guess what? It's going to come out if I could, it's going to come out the other end. And all that nutrition is going to stay locked up inside the bottle because I lack the enzymes to break that outer shell. And so humans lack the enzyme cellulase, which breaks open the cell wall, dissolves the cell wall to get the nutrition out of plant based foods. So if you were to swallow a salad without chewing it, you would poop a salad the next day. And certainly you can do the salad challenge if you want and see what happens, but it's going to go through your body completely undigested, which means that nutrition is going to be completely inaccessible to your cells. So chewing our food increases surface area. It activates a special reflex in our body, which tells our body it's time to slow down. It's time to take blood from the arms and legs and divert it back into the digestive system because Sinclair is about to eat her food right now. So by chewing, we actually put our body into a state of relaxation. We increase surface area. We start the enzymatic digestion of our food in our mouth. We taste our food. Tasting our food is also important because there's this chemical signature to that food that tells our brain to tell our digestive organs how much pancreatic enzyme, how much stomach acid, and how much lipase, and of course, how much bile to secrete to properly digest that food. So taste is very important. This is why artificial flavors and artificial colors can be very problematic because flavors have a signature and color has a signature to tell our body what to prepare for and what's coming down the pipeline. We may not know this at a conscious level, but at an unconscious level, our brain is constantly scanning what's going into our eyes and what's going into our mouth as well. And so the taste of our food, the visual impact of our food is also very important. So that's number two. We got to chew our food. Just remember your stomach doesn't have teeth. And so chewing your food is absolutely critical. This is why sometimes shakes and things like that can be problematic if we drink them too quickly, because you would never be able to chew that food that quickly if you were to consume it. And if we just going right from the gym, scarfing down our protein shake and then going right into work, your brain is like, where the hell did that come from? She didn't chew anything. She didn't have any chance to even taste what was coming or even get a perception of what was coming. So this is why a lot of people, even though they're drinking healthy smoothies, we want to make sure they're sipping on those smoothies, letting them sit in their mouth, almost chewing those foods. One example or one way to do that is to throw some crushed nuts in your smoothie. So it forces you to chew each bite.
Mm.
So that way, instead of grinding them up in the smoothie, just throw some crushed walnuts or something in there so that with each sip, you're chewing that smoothie and it allows you to slow down the process a little bit. That way, you're going to get more out of the food that you're eating. Number three is you want to chill. So you want to be in a relaxed state. Many times, and of course, nobody here is guilty of this, but many times we find moms are the last person to eat, or they're tending to their family, tending to their children, and most of their meal is eaten while they're standing. So it could be by the stove, it could be between the stove and trying to feed the kids. Well, we actually turn off our spleen energy when we stand up. So we always want to eat when we are sitting. That's one of the first things that we want to encourage people to do is sit while you eat. Because if you're walking around, guess where blood is going? Blood is going to your legs because if it wasn't, you'd just fall over. So we want to get into that deep parasympathetic state. We encourage people to do some breath work. You could do some simple breathing technique. You could have a prayer, which we'll talk about in a second. You could do some gratitude. You could do a circle of gratitude and ask each other how your day was. Socializing while you're eating is very much permitted. We want to shift our body into a state of happiness and security and into a state of being parasympathetic because that's going to activate our digestive system. The next step is to cherish. Okay. So we said first, you're going to choose the right foods, how you feel about them. You're going to chew that food, you're going to chill, and then you want to cherish. Take a few minutes, if you can, to just be grateful for every step that was involved in bringing that food to your plate. Every step that was involved, even if you're eating out or eating fast food, if that's the case, simply being grateful is going to shift you into a more parasympathetic state, which is going to directly enhance your digestive function. Be grateful. Think about every little step, right? Don't just be grateful for the food. Think in multiple layers. Like, how was that food prepared? Who grew that food? Who packaged it? Who cooked it for me? There's so many people involved in bringing that food to your plate that you can be grateful for. And having that gratitude goes a long way. And the last one is to check. So there's two ways to check. We can do a macroscopic check, which is take a peek in the toilet when you go to the bathroom, right? What is on the Bristol stool chart? What is the formation of your stool? Is it well formed? Is it loose? Are you constipated? You want to know that so that you can make micro adjustments. Maybe it's drinking more water. Maybe it's changing the position that you go in the bathroom, right? Using a squatty potty can make a huge difference because it correctly positions the pelvis. So you're not fighting your anatomy every time you go to the bathroom. Maybe you need to take more magnesium, right? Or eat more fiber rich foods. Maybe we see undigested food in your stool, like we see little bits of salad in there, or we see little pieces of cilantro in there, right? Because you're not chewing your food adequately. So this could be a great little feedback loop to tell you, hey, you need to chew your food a little bit more. Sometimes in severe cases, we might see things like coffee ground stool, which is an indication of cancer. We might see blood in the stool, which could indicate hemorrhoids. Your stool is really dark black. It could indicate a bleed in the upper GI tract. So we want to pick these things up early because sometimes we don't, some cancers go undetected until they're all the way into the fourth stage of cancer,
Mm.
especially in the colon. And the other way to check is doing an annual stool test. So work with a functional medicine practitioner, get a complete comprehensive stool analysis so that you can actually see what's happening at a microscopic level. Many times you may not even know what's going on in the bowel and you may actually have issues that are imminent. So I'll give you an example. My family and I was speaking at an event in Costa Rica. And when we came back, my son had this weird burping thing that he was doing. And we just thought, okay, I think he was like 5 at the time. So we just thought, okay, he's just being silly. He's a boy. Like these are things that people do. And he started getting really annoying and embarrassing. And we're like, dude, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And he's like, can't help it. So then we ran a stool test. None of us had any symptoms. My wife and I didn't have any symptoms. The only symptom my son had was he was burping. On the stool test, we discovered that all of us had picked up a parasite while we were there. And so I didn't have symptoms. My wife didn't have symptoms. We did a parasite cleanse, and boy, did we have parasites. And I would argue that the majority of people listening to this probably do,
Completely
because
concur.
most of us may not realize the function and the role of these parasites is to go undetected. And their job is to be stealth. If they made it very obvious and said, hey, look at me, I'm here, then all of us would go and do something about it. But their job is to remain stealth. And that's why we didn't have any symptoms. However, when our immune system becomes compromised and our defenses become compromised, let's say 5, 10, 15 years down the road, there's a pandemic or something crazy like that happens, or there's chaos in the world that's going on, or chaos in our lives that's going on, then we've got this stealth parasite in our body that is now going to take over. Our defenses have been weakened, and it might show up at that point as a symptomatic issue, but it could have been there all along. So that's why, at least annually, or if you go on a trip and something doesn't feel right, if you get food poisoning, or if you come back and your digestive system is just a little bit off, or you eat at a sketchy place. So we were eating, I say this is like when keeping it real goes wrong. So we were living in a cloud forest in Costa Rica. And I think at the time people were talking about, hey, like washing your food gets rid of all the healthy microbes on your food. And so I don't think they were washing the salad, right? They were just trying to be like all like, it was well intentioned, but I think looking back, that's probably what led to the parasite overgrowth. And so every year it's advised to my clients, at least, that they check just to make sure. But it's also important to know that not all parasites are going to be picked up on every stool test that you run. So it's good to have that information. But if you're having symptoms or you're strongly intuitively perceiving that, hey, something isn't quite right, then it might be a good idea to prophylactically do a parasite cleanse, because sometimes you'll pick things up that way as well. So testing can be great, but it's not the be all and end all. I think our gut and intuition is the be all and end all. So really get in tune with what your body's telling you. Even muscle testing can be a great way to pick up on whether there's a parasite or not. And there's some great protocols. I won't name names, but there's some really great protocols and great companies out there that have fantastic multi-phase protocols to get rid of some of these problematic critters that pretty much all of us have to a certain degree.
I'm so glad you talked about that because, what we say all the time in our practice is every continent and every spiritual tradition has fasting built to
Hmm.
reset the gut. And also, traditionally, even up until the 40s and 50s, parasite cleanses. This is a recent forgetting that we have done, very
Hmm.
recent. We knew this for a very long time.
Yeah, and you actually prompted me to, when in the choose category, there's one thing that I forgot to mention. It's choosing the right time.
Mm,
So a lot of times people will come to us and maybe even to you and they'll say, "When should I eat and what should I eat?" The first question we should be asking is, when shouldn't you be eating? So we don't want to eat 3 hours before bedtime, if
mm.
at all possible. I travel quite a bit and sometimes it's not always possible. So do your best. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I just want to make sure that we're at least laying out general guidelines. So you want to try to eat away from bedtime as much as you can. And our digestive system is actually strongest at midday. So midday isn't always at 12 o'clock noon. Time is an artificial construct. However, the positioning of the sun is how our biology aligns itself and aligns its systems. So between 10 o'clock and 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is when the sun is in the highest position. So you might have to check that in your local region where you live, but that's when you should be having the strongest digestive function. In Ayurvedic, we call it Agni, which is our digestive fire. And so, depending on your constitution, some people are Kapha, Vata, and Pitta. Some people are going to have strong fire, strong digestive fire, and some people are going to have weak digestive fire. So I'm a Pitta, so I have very strong digestive fire. And so avoiding things for me specifically that are very warming, like ginger and spices, would be advisable. Whereas my wife, she's a Vata, and Vatas actually need warming. So she needs warming spices. So having some ginger tea with her meal, or having ginger in her food, or adding some spices to heat up her digestive fire could be advisable for her. There are little nuances, and that's beyond the scope of this conversation, but knowing your dosha, as it's referred to as, can be vital in understanding, okay, what are the nuances of what I'm eating that can be better optimized for my personal constitution.
So glad you said that because one of the things that we say often in our practice is we are diet agnostic. We're not here to push a diet religion on you or a certain timing of intermittent fasting. It's very important to meet the body where it is. And everybody is different. You're going to have created different food sensitivities due to your earlier exposures, and especially with previous processed food habits. We sensitize our bodies in different ways. And so it's so important to meet your body where it's at, whether it's about your personal history or, like you're saying, your constitution, your temperament. These are essential to understand.
Yeah, so important. And it's important for us to account for that bio individuality
Hmm.
and have that self awareness so that we know what works for us and what doesn't. And my wife and I work with an Ayurvedic practitioner. And one of the things that we realized is that us eating the same foods doesn't work, even though they're even though they're super healthy, organic, like they check off a lot of the boxes. Certain foods I'll intuitively look at and I'll be like, I don't think this is the right food for me. And then before she understood this and we went through this self awareness process, she was like, "Oh, you're being so difficult. You're being so this." I'm like, "No, intuitively, this doesn't feel right to me. I don't know how to express that in any other way." But then when we found out what my constitution was, we started realizing why these foods that are overheating my body are not good for me,
Mhm.
because it doesn't just lead to heat in the digestive system, it leads to heat in the head. So then it shortens your temper, it makes you more aggressive, it makes you more short tempered, if you will, and it throws you off in so many different ways. So, one of the ways that we were able to compromise is to use condiments. So, we can use condiments like chutney, which is a mix of cilantro and mint, and we can use that to me down, and she can use warming spices or warming tea to heat her body up so that she could better digest her food. So there's ways that you can find balance when you have this level of understanding of what works for you and what works for your partner and what doesn't.
It's just so smart because I know that folks listening, whether it's we tend to have 2 populations that come to us. One is the high performers who have big work to do in this world, and they're very aware that they're not at their best, even if they're outpacing other people. Something is deeply wrong inside, and they have to fix it so that they can get back to being who they really are and leading again. And then we have the folks that have layers and layers of chronic illness and are
Mm.
very willing to do the work. And they know that they need to be the one in the driver's seat because they've been so let down by the medical system. And I know that both of them are listening to you and picking up so many amazing tips about the layers of intention that go into optimizing your health and actually being present with your body when it comes to just the basics of digestion. So, my question to you, and you've answered this in part, but I want to know if you want to take it further today, is we always reference how quickly the digestive tract can regenerate itself. Oh, every 3 days, you can have a whole new gut lining. And it always begs a question for the people following us. Why is it taking me so long to heal? What is actually disrupting that? And we focus a lot in this summit on the principles of restoring flow, whether that's using meditation and other self awareness practices, settling down your nervous system, and also even down to the foods that you choose and all that. But I'm really curious to hear what your answer is. Why is it taking so long to heal?
Yeah, great
And what can
question.
I do
So
about it?
yeah, so here's what I talk about this a lot in my presentation. So I always ask people, does buying you a new car make you a better driver? Probably not. And I know that all these cars have new features and stuff like that. It doesn't make you a better driver. It's the skills and the experience that make you a better driver.
Mm,
So if we give you a brand new set of cells, like right now, billions of cells during this conversation have died and replaced themselves. You're a hologram of life and death happening simultaneously. However, if those cells are getting the same signal of fight or flight,
yeah.
then they're going to be producing a fight or flight response. If your body is in a stressed out state, you're going to be sending blood flow inadequately to certain parts where healing and regeneration takes place. And you're going to be sending excess blood flow where you don't want it. So, the concept that we call autonomic pairing is pairing your nervous system with the activity you're trying to accomplish. So, when I'm at rest, I want blood flow going to my core. A really interesting example from a study that was done on athletes in extreme cases of fight or flight, which is racing or sprinting, stuff like that, they're sending about 90% less blood flow to their liver and kidneys.
Mm,
So at rest, about 50% of our blood flow goes to our liver and kidneys. In fight or flight, only about 5% of our blood flow goes to our liver and kidneys. So I could give somebody who's under stress all the liver support, all the detox support, all the nutritional support, even have them eating a healthy diet. But if they're not getting those nutrients to those tissues and they're not breathing correctly to remove the waste of the metabolic byproducts that are taking place, then they're never going to reach that full potential. They might feel better, but I know that you and I don't settle for better. We want to help people reach optimal. And so autonomic pairing is very key. So we always want to ask ourselves, okay, if I am working on deep work, but my breathing pattern is in a fight or flight breathing pattern, I'm not even sending blood to my neocortex. I'm sending blood to my reptilian brain, right? I'm sending blood to my limbs as opposed to sending it to my core where I need it. If I'm trying to digest my food, where do I want to send blood? I want to send it to my core. If I'm trying to have a baby, for example, or if a mom or dad working together as a couple trying to have a child, if they're constantly sending blood to their limbs because they're constantly in fight or flight, then they're sending their body a message that says, we don't even have adequate blood flow to grow this baby. We barely have blood flow to digest the food that we're eating and detox and all these other things. How are you going to then grow this baby inside of you, which requires tremendous amounts of blood flow? So really having that self-awareness of their nervous system function is very critical. And the master override is our breath. So no matter what's happening in your life, I know people, when you say it's stress, people roll their eyes because they feel they have no control over the situation. And that might be the case. You may not have control over the situation, but you do have control over your breath and how you interpret the situation. And the breath overrides the situation. So one of the things that I practice, this may sound a little strange, but I'll share it anyways, is I take a cold shower every morning. And that isn't even the strange part. The strange part is I get in the cold shower and I override my breath. So I breathe very slowly so that under extreme amounts of stress, like cold water coming down through a rain shower, it's like shards of glass on your body. I am using my conscious brain and I'm using my breath to tell my body everything's going to be okay. So it doesn't create that shocking stress response. I'm conditioning my body to be much more tolerant to extreme levels of stress, for example.
Mm.
But we can do that, right? We can control how we respond to a situation by using our mind, and our mind can be very creative. And oftentimes it can be creative in creating the negative and the worst of things. But we want to also condition our mind to create the best of the situation that we're in. And then when in doubt, use your breath throughout the day, right? It's not just about that 5 minutes of breathing that you do in the beginning of the day and the rest of your day is a shit show. It's really about constantly coming back to the breath. So there's three things that we focus on when it comes to breathing. There's really more, but for the sake of time, I'll talk about these three. So the check-in that we do with ourselves, number one is my tongue in the correct position. By correctly positioning your tongue at the roof of your mouth, at the tip of the tongue, at the back of your front teeth, you're actually activating a postural muscle. So your tongue, believe it or not, is not just for talking and tasting, it's actually a postural muscle as well. When we put our tongue in the correct position, it relaxes the muscles in the back of our neck. And so that's going to immediately alleviate the stress and tension that we feel in our shoulders. What also happens when we put our tongue in the correct position is we can't breathe through our mouth anymore because our tongue basically seals our mouth in that position. And now we're breathing through our nose. Nasal breathing is very important because it increases nitric oxide production. It filters the air, moisture regulates the air, and it also helps us increasing the production of nitric oxide. And so that has antibacterial, antiviral properties, but it also dilates our blood vessels so we can get blood flow to our neocortex. The hardest part to send blood is the top of our head because we're working against gravity and we have tiny little blood vessels. So breathing correctly is super important. And then the other thing that we encourage people to do is once they have that awareness, is they want to slow down their breathing. So we call it samurai breathing. James Nestor refers to this in his book called Breath, where if I were to put a feather under your nose, that feather shouldn't move. That's how slowly you should be breathing. And when you do that, what's going to happen is it's going to shift your body into a parasympathetic state. That's where our creativity lives. That's where our problem solving lives. That's where our imagination lives, is when we are in that parasympathetic state. When we're in a sympathetic dominant state, we're not creative, right? We're reactive. We're not creating, we're not problem solving. We're creating more problems for ourselves, usually in that state. We're running away from a problem. But if we want to face a problem head on and come up with a creative solution, it really starts by shifting our breathing so that we can send blood to the right part of our brain and actually solve that challenge that we're facing.
That's so well said. I think that's the best succinct explanation of how to breathe I've ever heard. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you.
sharing that with us here because it's so essential for maintaining our own health and taking our health back into our own hands. And we just have forgotten how to do it in this culture. And it's so exciting to see this revival of interest in the breath and breath work. So that leads me to, I think we have time for one more question, real quick. And it's not a small one, but I really want to ask it to you because I see you as such an amazing teacher in this space and a luminary in helping people to take back their own power and reconnect to spirit and reclaim their own sovereignty at the spiritual level and also over their own bodies. And I think this is actually the revolution of health that we are both participating in right now. And I want to know if you have any closing thoughts for folks who are on this health journey and are right in the middle of reclaiming their power and taking their health back into their own hands.
Yeah. One of the things I'll share this really quick. So I we did a plant medicine journey several years ago, and it was my first hero's dose. And this is with psilocybin. And one of the things that happened within 20 minutes of taking the medicine, I was whisked away to my son's funeral. And it was really weird, right? Like you can only imagine. I'm like, is this what they call a bad trip? Because that's the worst thing I could possibly imagine. And what I learned is that medicine always teaches you what you need. So I had the foresight to ask the question, why am I seeing this? He's in his coffin, he's in his little suit. I'm standing there. I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on here? And the medicine gave me the lesson and it said, stop loving him to death, love him to life. And then the image turned into this golden spiral and disappeared. And I got my message. And so that's a message I want to share with everyone today is we love ourselves to death, literally, it's time we start loving ourselves to life and ask ourselves that question: is what I'm doing right now bringing out the best in me, or is it bringing out the worst in me? Is how I'm showing up for other people bringing out the best in them or bringing out the worst in them? And what can I do? Because it really starts with us, right? If you're a candle, you've got to be lit first if you're going to light other candles. And so we've got to light that candle inside us by cleaning up our diets, by cleaning up our mind. We talked about this before the recording. There's 8 limbs of yoga, and invite everyone to just Google that and do their own work there. We live in the senses, and the senses can be very dangerous because the outside world is an illusion, right? None of it's real. In Sanskrit, the word is Maya, Maya, and everything is constantly changing. And when everything is constantly changing, it's hard to know what is real and what isn't real, right? Just think of this pandemic that we're going through. Every day, it's a different story, right? So it's hard to know what to believe. But there's a piece of us at the very essence of who we are that's never changing. And if we can anchor ourselves to that, the word is Atma, which is our soul, then that is going to be our path forward. I always say the light at the end of the tunnel is you. But you've got to light yourself up from the inside, right? It starts by going there first, showing up the best way you possibly can for yourself, for others around you, for your family, for your community, for your practice, if you're a practitioner. But it all starts with us. And if we find ourselves trying to change all the things around us, we're stuck in our senses, we're stuck in illusion. But when we go inwards, then we access the only thing that's real, which is the essence of who we are.
I can't think of a better way to end this conversation. That was such a beautiful message. I really appreciate you sharing with our community today. And I think the world of you. So thanks so much for being here, Sachin.
Thank you, Sinclair. It was quite the honor. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for everything that you're doing.
Thanks for listening. Go to detoxrejuvenation.com to find the links in the show notes to everything we covered in this episode. Please subscribe, review, and share with other humans who need this precious information. Let's help each other. Until next time, love, Sinclair.